Hello everyone, welcome to today's edition of the Java workshop on Instagram. For those of you joining us for the first time and those of you who've been here before, you all know that Java workshop is a place where we have quick conversations with experts in the field of motorcycling and beyond. These topics can take us right from motorcycle riding, motorcycle maintenance, touring essentials to skills like improving your photography and videography and other things that make your life on motorcycles a lot better. Today's topic is more about all the fun to be had while we're riding our Java motorcycles. And just like us, even our motorcycles have their limits. The better we understand our motorcycles, the better we will be able to explore their real capabilities. So today's session is all about that. And I'd now like to welcome Sagar Sheldekar, who will be speaking with us today. Just hang on till I... okay. So I have... we're just waiting for Sagar to join and so that we can start this conversation with you. And while Sagar is connecting with us, I'd like to introduce Sagar. Now, hi Sagar.
Hey, how are you doing?
We're doing great. And guys, everybody, Sagar needs no introduction. He's all things motorcycling, and he's the man and the face behind the Living It Up series on YouTube. And he's one of the best riders and motorcycle content creators in the country. And he's also a coach at the California Superbike School. So that speaks a lot about his riding capacities and capabilities. And I think, Sagar is today the best person for us to speak to about today's topic. So let's start with the conversation with Sagar. So hi, Sagar. I hope you're missing motorcycles during this quarantine period.
That would be the biggest understatement on earth.
I can
You're
imagine.
you're all going crazy. We cannot get back on them.
All right, Sagar. So, starting the conversation today, I'd like to just project a picture here to set the context. These are like the fastest motorcycles in the world. And, you know, but only a select few riders get to ride them, and that too absolutely on the track. And, these are like the ultimate pinnacle when it comes to the best handling and the best performance motorcycles. Otherwise, now we have these road bikes, which are basically derived from MotoGP motorcycles, the same technology, but with headlamps, which you can ride on the streets, and still you can explore them to the complete potential. But, there are a lot of other different types of motorcycles, and especially we would like to focus today on classic motorcycles. So I found this very famous picture on the internet, and it's about a guy doing his elbow down on a classic motorcycle. Now, this is a very, very big contrast to all the high performance bikes and their pictures that we see. And, but this makes me believe that, even if you're riding a classic motorcycle, you can still go really fast and you can still explore the capabilities of a motorcycle. So that's what we wanted to start with. So how do we start this conversation? So I think, it's very important for a rider to know his own abilities. So how do you go about finding your own abilities and then trying to, progress, make progress in a very eventual manner?
I mean, it's the same thing as anything else that you want to learn. You first need to go to a professional school, and it's always easier if you start with a motorcycle. Anyone can go fast in a straight line. That doesn't really require as much of skill as long as you know how to brake well. But the complexity increases when you show people corners. That's where the fun lies, and that's where also the danger lies if you don't know the right technique. So, of
Yes.
course, go to a professional school, and it's obviously better if you start on a motorcycle, which is more on the sportier side, because it's meant to take the corners better. It's set up the geometry wise, suspension wise, brake wise, it's better equipped to handle those kind of situations better, because manufacturers have predicted that a good chance that you will be taking those motorcycles there. So that would be a very good starting point to understand the basics, to understand how to ride your motorcycle, what to do, what not to do. I think what not to do is a very good starting point, because you'll always learn every single time you get on a motorcycle, right? You'll always learn something new. But at least if you know what not to do, that would go a long way in making sure that you stay safe on your motorcycle, and yeah, you can keep enjoying these beautiful machines without getting hurt.
All right, so that answers our first question. And for those of you who have been joining us, I'd like to tell you to please use this question mark button in case if you have any questions for Sagar, and we will try and answer all the relevant ones. So Sagar, now moving on to our conversation. Now, you have started, figuring out your own capabilities. Now, what do you do next? How do you get towards understanding the capabilities of your motorcycle?
So yeah, so once you have the technique nailed down, once you know what to do, what not to do, and let's say you're going out for a nice ride on a mountainous road. Uh, First things first, you obviously, I would say, even before you start really riding and picking up the pace, it's important to first understand the road, understand. So let's say we shoot a lot at this place called Lavasa, which is very close to Pune, and I've been going there for the longest of times, right? But even now, when I go back, the road changes. You know, there are a lot more bumps. There's a lot more gravel at places where I've never seen any. So it's very important that the first time I'm going up, I'm very careful and gauging what's on the road, so that um, I'm well within the limits and understanding that I'm on a public road and to be as safe as possible. Next, let's say you've been there, you've gone up, you've had your morning chai, and you want to have a little bit of fun. Well, then, again, the next part of the equation is your motorcycle. If you are on a sportier bike, good chance with a little bit of tweaking, you will be already on your way to having really good fun. But let's say you're on a Java, you're on a classic motorcycle. That doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot have fun. I mean, when I had the Java with me, I had a ball of a time riding it up and down Lavasa. We shot in Lavasa, and it was a lot of fun. There are a lot of things going for the Java in terms of, I really like how it carries its weight. I know it's one of the lighter motorcycles in its segment, but it's also the way it carries it. The balance is really well. And you then just have to make the most of the existing package. So the ergonomics obviously are not as sporty. They're a lot more upright. It has wider bars. The geometry is not going to be as steep. The suspension is going to be on the softer side.
Yes.
The brakes are not going to be as potent. So where do you start? I would say, even before you hop on a motorcycle and then go and even think about riding it fast on a mountainous road, first thing you got to do is, irrespective of what bike you have, is first set up the motorcycle for your weight. I'm talking about setting up. That's the most important thing, because when a manufacturer makes a motorcycle, he makes a motorcycle keeping in mind, or sets it up in the default setting for a rider who is maybe 74 kgs. So if you are in that ballpark, good chance you're fine. But if you're not, there's a good chance you will have to tweak the suspension so that you can ride it, so that basically the motorcycle is set up for your weight. Now, I know a lot of these classic motorcycles don't have a lot of adjustment, barring maybe just the rear preload. But even that is a very good starting point. Whatever little adjustment that the manufacturer has given you, especially preload, it's very, very important that you at least set up the rear sag using that preload. Another tip is, if you are going to a mountainous road and you do want to try, picking up your pace, having a little bit of fun, the first problem that you face with classic motorcycles is you don't really have very good cornering clearance. The first sound you hear when you want to have some fun, and that's the foot peg grazing. And when we were young, we were all stupid and we thought it was the best thing on earth that we are grazing our pegs. But that's not really a very good thing to do, because that means you are at the absolute limit. And if you find yourself in a situation where you've gone into a corner too hot, you're already scraping your pegs, that's it. You cannot lean the bike anymore. If you try to do it, good chance that the foot peg might get stuck in the ground and it might pivot. and cause the front to fold or the
Yeah.
rear to come around. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very scary scenario. And if you're already riding really hard and scraping pegs, you're not very far from inviting trouble. So how to get around this problem is again that setting up the bike for your weight is a good way. Is a first good step in that direction, because when you pump up your preload, yeah, another thing which happens is you are increasing your cornering clearance a little bit, which
Okay.
will help you scrape your peg a little bit lesser, not as soon, yeah, because the suspension is not moving as much. The rear suspension is very, very spongy. You're gonna hit, or you're gonna start scraping your pegs like this. So that's one good thing. Another thing I would say is, let's say you can set up, you have like 5-step preload adjustment. Yeah. Right
Yeah.
now, you are, as per your weight, you're number 3. Yeah. I will never ever recommend bumping up the preload all the way, because
Okay.
then you're essentially not allowing the suspension, the rear suspension, to work at all.
Yeah.
So if you do want to go on a mountainous ride, maybe I would say go to 4, but never all the way. So you're
Okay.
at least allowing the suspension to work and to absorb whatever little bumps that you might encounter. Yeah, so that's very, very important. Second thing I would say is you need to understand that even after you do that, this is just your rear suspension. Your front, there's a good chance is still going to be on the softer side. The weight
Okay. Yeah.
transfer, yeah, is still going to be, the bike is not going to be the most well balanced as compared to, say, a naked street fighter or a sportier bike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
the bike is still going to be going back and forth a lot. Yeah, every time you get on the gas, you go back. Every time you let go of the gas, you come forward. You brake,
Yes.
come forward even more. That's the weight transfer, and that is obviously affecting the amount of traction you have. So you have to keep this in mind. So when you start riding a classic motorcycle, which are usually on the heavier side, which are softly set up, you
Yeah.
also have to be very, very smooth with your inputs, to aid the weight transfers. Also, when you get on the gas, you don't just get on the gas full. You
Okay.
slowly roll
Correct.
the gas.
All
Even when
right.
you're rolling low, it's a good habit to start rolling off softly. Also when you get on the brakes, don't just jam the brakes. Get on the brake and slowly increase the pressure. Understand the capabilities of your bike. Understand that you are doing something on a motorcycle which is not really what it was meant to do.
Correct.
Can it
Yeah.
do it? Sure. And that is what we are exploring. But you have to leave a decent margin for error. The brakes again are not as fierce. The tires are not as sticky as you would find on sportier motorcycles. So you have to keep that in mind, and you have to ride within those limits.
Correct.
Um, Next thing again, how to get around scraping your pegs, even if you're really smooth and whatever, you will still reach that limit very, very soon, right? Because you don't have as much room. So
Yeah.
then it's a question of the line which you pick. If you go for very, very tight lines, uh, which is something which a lot of people tend to do because they tend to stick to the inside, they stick to the middle of the road rather than the outside. For obvious reasons, there's gravel or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you suddenly want to make the bike turn, you're going to reach the threshold of your cornering clearance very, very quickly. So then it's a matter of, using a wider line, a sweeping line, so that you don't reach your cornering limits as quickly. So vision is also very, very important, that you look ahead, you have a clear idea about where you're going. And normally, as is the technique, even when you're riding on the racetrack, is out, in, out. But again,
Correct.
we are
Yeah.
riding on the public road, which means you still have to stay within your lane.
Yeah.
But you can be a little bit on the outside, put the edge of the road. Again, at the apex, you come closest to the innermost part of your lane. And then you again, as you accelerate, go out. So having a smoother line will obviously allow you to carry a little more corner speed and have a little more fun. What else? I would say,
And you obviously see the point where you need to go and where you need to exit out from.
Absolutely. I
That
mean,
also
vision
works. Yes. Yeah.
vision is the key.
Yeah.
Especially if you're riding on a public road, you only commit to a corner when you're 100% sure that there is no oncoming traffic, there's no danger, and you can see well through the corner. Yeah.
Correct.
If you
Yes.
cannot, if you encounter corners where you can't really see all the way through, don't commit. So slow down, and where you're expecting someone to be in your lane, you know, basically slow down your pace up to that point. And only
Yes.
when you're 100% sure that there's no one or no danger, then you can commit to the corner. So that's very, very important. Another thing which I would say is uh, something which I really enjoyed on the Java Classic was, even though you were sitting upright, you're not really sporty, and even though foot pegs were more front set rather than rear set, one thing which it had going for it, in fact, the one thing which I preferred over the Java 42 was the handlebar position. So yeah, it was more traditional. Um, yeah, it's more upright, but if you look at it, it also gives you a lot more leverage, which
Okay.
makes it
Yes.
very, very easy to turn the motorcycle. And this combined with the fact that the Java really carries its weight very, very sweetly, in terms of mass centralization and everything, it's a very well sorted motorcycle. So even though, yeah, it has a softer suspension, the forks are on the softer side, this ability, it really helps to using the wider bars to, easily, sweetly lean the bike into corners. So
Correct. Yeah.
even before we get into modifications and everything, this is the motorcycle you bought. It's the same motorcycle which takes you to work comfortably. Maybe also allows you to do a little bit of off-road bit. So it's the same motorcycle. If you don't really want to make drastic changes to it, just utilize it. Utilize whatever equipment it came with to its utmost ability,
All
and
right.
and from there on, it's fantastic. The other problem I would say is, yeah, if you are really serious about hitting the mountains very often on the Java, I would say maybe you might want to get rid of the side stand, because you have decent ground clearance. If I remember correctly, it's about 165 mm. That's a
Yes.
decent amount of ground clearance. The problem is the side stand starts scraping a lot earlier. So maybe if you have bought it and you're one of our sportier riders, yeah, maybe you might want to get rid of it and make do with just a main stand. Anything which will give you a little more cornering clearance will make your ride that much more fun in the mountains.
Correct. So while we are speaking on the setup, we were talking about the rear suspension and adjusting the preload. Is there anything that we can do to make some corrections to the front suspension?
Uh, the first thing that I would try
Yeah.
is go for a more viscous fork oil. So before even getting into the springs, before even getting into the changing the internal components, the first thing that I would do is experiment with a more viscous oil like a 20W.
Okay.
That's a little bit on the extreme side, but that's a fork oil which is very easily available. So you can try with a 20W fork oil, and I have tried that on some of my projects on living it up, and it worked very, very well. In fact,
Okay.
to give you an example, on my RC390, I know this is more on the sportier side, but I was really unhappy with the rear shock of the RC390. It is incredibly, incredibly soft. So I went ahead and installed a Öhlins unit. But here's the thing, the Öhlins unit was obviously set up for my weight. So
Okay.
even without styling any preload, the spring was already on the stiffer side, right? And now, as soon as I put that in, excuse me, the front now was suddenly too soft.
Okay. Yeah.
Even before I dial in any compression or I dial in any more preload, yeah, I'm talking zero preload, zero compression, yeah, just the spring, and it's already making the front feel very, very soft. So then
Okay.
we got around this problem guy by going. At that point of time, we did not have front forks from Öhlins available, so we just went ahead with a more thicker oil. And yeah, that worked well. That worked really, really well. Now that was a more extreme. We went for something like a 75W oil, which is normally used for motocross. I wouldn't go
Okay.
that extreme, but it has worked in the past. And just by doing that, the bike was a lot uh, more planted. The weight transfer was a lot smoother because there was a lot more damping, which was happening thanks to the more viscous cookware. So that is something which I would recommend. If you are really serious, you can go ahead. But understand that thicker oil would also mean that, excuse me, whatever exceptional ride quality which the
Yes.
Java brings to the table, that's going to take a hit. So it's always a give and take.
Yeah, it's
So yeah,
always
you will,
compromise there. Yeah.
yeah. So you'll
That's
always earn a little bit. It'll be great. The front will feel better. The weight transfer will be smoother. But yeah, over really bad surfaces, you will lose the magic carpet like ride quality of the front.
correct. That might also uh, help the ground clearance, maybe, if the suspension is stiffer.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I lost you.
I said, will that also make a difference to the ground clearance a little bit?
Uh, yeah, I mean, essentially so if you have dialed in your preload, already you are in the higher range of your ride quality. Yeah, because the
Correct.
suspension is
Yeah.
working in the higher part of the
Yes.
stroke. So that is anyway helping you with your cornering clearance. Now, if you go for a more viscous front as well, the weight transfer is going to be a lot more smoother as well. So there's not going to be a lot of diving and pitching, right? So that will obviously help you also with your ground clearance, your cornering clearance for sure.
All right. So yeah, so we've spoken enough on the bike setup. How? So what are the key things that you need to keep in mind when you're riding now on the road and you want to improve your riding? You want to go fast, but you still want to be safe. What are the things that should be going on in your mind and that you should be translating to the road through the motorcycle?
I would just say, I mean, this is what I do every single time I'm out shooting or testing a motorcycle. I just remind myself as soon as I get on the bike that I'm riding on a public road. Uh, so I obviously have to dial everything down, maybe
Yes.
40,
Yeah.
50%, because uh, not just for your own safety, for other people on the road. Of course, make sure that you're properly kitted to prepare for the worst, because not necessarily it's your fault all the time. Maybe someone can hit you even when you're standing stationary. So being
Yeah.
in the right gear obviously helps. And when you start riding, yeah, just go there to have fun. You don't really have to go very, very fast. As long as you get your drills right, as long as you can get on the throttle right when you want it. Uh, I don't know. Some of my best rides, even at Lavasa, even when I'm not shooting, are rides where I'm the smoothest, not necessarily the fastest, but the smoothest. And here's the interesting bit. The smoother you are, inevitably you will be faster. You might not feel that you're going that much faster, but trust me, you are. Because that also means that you're a lot more focused. You're doing everything right. You're connecting the dots, as they say, staying out of trouble. You're not asking too much from your motorcycle. You're respecting the riding dynamics of your bike, of the suspension, of the tires.
Yes.
And yeah, you're just having a good time. So I would just say be as smooth as possible. And that's the best way to get the most out of your bike in its existing stock setup.
All right. So I was just going through the questions, and there are a lot of people who've been asking, how do you get confidence around corners? So I think whatever you said just now explains all of that pretty beautifully.
I would say, I mean, to be honest, if you are really into cornering, I mean, that's why I'm here. I love
Yeah.
motorcycles because of the amount of fun you can have in corners. Uh, but I would say if you are really keen and if you really want to learn, go to a racetrack. I know I'll get a lot of
Yes.
flack for this. I know you have a classic motorcycle, but no, it does not matter. Even if you have an
Correct.
adventure bike,
Yeah. Yes.
going to a proper professional riding school will do unbelievable stuff to the way you ride. It doesn't matter if you've been riding on the road for 5 years, 6 years, does not matter. If anything, you have picked up a lot of bad habits. Yeah. In fact, every time I go to test a motorcycle on a racetrack, it takes me maybe a session or so to reacquaint my brain to the fact that I'm on a racetrack, because
Okay.
I'm not used to braking so late in a corner like you can on a racetrack. Because every time you're riding on the road, you're always leaving such a big margin for error, always leaving big margins for error. But on a racetrack, you don't have to do that. You can push comfortably. So that's
Correct.
one
Yeah.
thing. And secondly, worst case scenario, you're on a racetrack, and even if you crash, yeah, or if things go wrong, or if you scrape your peg, you will have a lot of runoff area.
Correct.
Good
Yes.
chance you will get up and start riding again. On the road, you might not be as lucky. And the
Correct.
worst part about riding on the road is you might not just end up hurting yourself, but also someone else. So it's a big responsibility, and you have to be well aware. But yeah, as far as learning is concerned, and this is something which you derive a lot of pleasure out of, attend a riding school. I know it's not easy. I know we don't have a lot of riding schools. We don't have a lot of racetracks. But trust me, it will be worth it. And whatever you learn on a racetrack, you will learn more in a single day under proper guidance on a racetrack than what you have learned for the last 4 or 5 years riding on the road on your own. No, no two ways about it.
Correct. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And so, yeah. So, there's another question of a person who wants to know what are the careful measures that you need to consider when you're riding in the rain, when the road surface is wet, especially on a street motorcycle?
It's a very, very good question. It's very interesting because I used to always wonder. You started with MotoGP, so I'll bring in the MotoGP thing here. Like, how on earth do these guys ride those 300 horsepower machines so
Yes.
fast in the rain? Of course, you have the tires, but also the more I dug in terms of suspension setup, you won't believe it. The suspension setup, as hard as they like it in the dry, it's that much softer in the rain.
Oh,
So to answer your question, in normal case scenario, it just means dialing everything back a few extra notches. So if you brake at a certain point in the dry, you have to brake much, much earlier when you're riding in the rain. You
correct.
have
Yeah.
to be, if you say you are a smooth rider, you ride in the dry, you have to be twice as smooth riding in the wet, because you have to give your bike that much more room, that much more time to settle. Everything needs to be that much smoother, because again, we are talking about much more limited traction.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you have to keep that in mind. What's keeping you upright is the amount of traction you have. And the rain, of course, because it's wet, you have a lot less traction. So every movement you do, whether it's your throttle action, whether it's your braking or you're moving on the bike, that is affecting your traction. So you have to do everything a lot more uh, smoothly, carefully, be even more vigilant when you're riding in the rain. Um, yeah, so just dial everything back a few extra notches and you should be okay.
Yes.
And trust me, I love, I used to hate riding in the rain, but ever since I took to off-road, now I really look forward to riding in the rain, because it's only when you have very limited traction can you really understand, you can develop the skills required when things get awry. And that's also when you can relax your mind or prepare your mind
Yes.
when you find yourself in situations where you have very limited traction, or you had traction and you have suddenly lost traction. So it's a beautiful experience, but of course you have to understand the danger and the risk which is involved. And the way to minimize that risk is just, again, dial things back a few extra notches.
Okay, great. Got it. So, Sagar, I think, we are reaching towards the end of the session, and
Yeah.
I'd like to do a quick recap. I've been making notes so that I could do a recap in the end for people who are out there. So, guys, I think, it's the most important thing is to uh, set up your motorcycle as per depending on your weight. You have to make sure that you adjust the preload correct. And Sagar, you're free to add uh, to whatever I'm saying, and
I
never
would just, I
go
would
all
just
the way
say,
up. Yeah,
I would just say SAG. People get very, I don't know, for whatever reason, no one likes to touch suspension. Everyone's scared that what if I screw it up? Trust me, it's not rocket science. If I can do it, so can you. I'm not asking you to get into compression and rebound. No, I understand that it can get overwhelming. SAG is something which is very easy. There are
yeah,
thousands of really fantastic videos which I have done with Power Drift back in the day. You have people like Dave Moss. You can watch out his videos on YouTube. And honestly, it's very, very easy. You don't even require, you'll just require a C-spanner, or that's about it. But I urge you to do it because it will radically transform your bike. I mean, if you've been riding all this while without setting up the bike for your weight, and if you go ahead, take my advice and you do it, trust me, you'll come ahead and thank me because that's how big a difference it makes.
great. So guys, so you've heard it from Sagar himself, and also when you're riding, then your smoothness is the key. Be smooth in all your actions, in your acceleration, braking. Always take a corner when you're completely confident and when you have your complete vision. So those are the key things which you need to keep in mind. And Sagar, now at the end of the session, I have a kind of a fun question for you. So say what are your 2 cents on how would you make your perfect classic motorcycle go faster? So maybe if we had a Saga Sheldecker edition, how would that be?
Uh, well then, if I make up my mind, then I'll go all in, man. I mean, we're talking rear sets, we are talking stickier rubber, we're talking obviously suspension, you know,
Yes.
um, uh, like the picture which you just showed. It's
Yes.
very much possible. It's just that that guy has taken the effort to change all of those parts.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
and as long as you have the right equipment, you can have a lot of fun. I mean, even if you see there are a lot of races uh, in the UK where people race old motorcycles,
Yeah.
and
Correct. Yes.
it's so much fun to watch. So yeah, with the right equipment, you can transform your classic motorcycle into a proper track weapon. But yeah, that would require a lot of changes:
Yes.
um, suspension, tires, clip-ons, rear sets, and of course, if you're going that far, then of course a little more performance from the engine. So yeah, the whole 9 yards. If you're going in, we might as well go all in.
Got it. So, thanks so much, Sagar, for speaking with us, and thank you to everybody who's joined this session. And I hope you like this session, and I hope this session helps you in becoming a better rider. And also, since we are under a lockdown, a lot of you might be in green zones, and you might have gotten a chance to take your motorcycles out. But for all of us who are still under a lockdown, I think it's a good time for us to prepare ourselves, read a lot more on the subject, and so that when the time comes for us to take the motorcycles out, we can try these things. So till then, stay home, stay safe, and when we get to riding, ride safe. Thanks, Sagar. Thanks, everyone. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.